Zira stood inside the silver chamber of her shuttle, staring down at the planet below. Her purple eyes narrowed in disgust. That was Earth, the home of the humans. She had learned about them since she was small, primitive, violent, selfish creatures. They lived on the dirty surface of planets, not in the skies like her kind. They were dangerous, unclean, and unworthy of trust. She was not supposed to come this close to their world. But her scout ship had been hit by a solar flare. The systems failed, one by one. Now she was falling fast. Flames rising on the side of the shuttle. Her crew had escaped in pods, but she was trapped alone. The ship screamed as it broke through the clouds. Zero braced herself as the shuttle crashed into the forest below. Trees shattered, metal screamed, and then everything went black when she opened her eyes. It was night. Smoke rose around her, and her body hurt everywhere. She pushed herself up, but cried out in pain. Her leg was broken, her shoulder burned. The emergency beacon was silent. No one was coming. She crawled out of the wreckage, dragging her injured leg. The air smelled like rot and damp earth. Mud clung to her skin. Thick and cold, she hated it. This was the filth she had been warned about. Her long white robe was torn, now covered in brown and green. In her culture, purity was everything: clean skin, clean air, clean thoughts. Here, everything felt wrong. She looked up at the night sky, but saw no lights from her people. No rescue ship. She was alone and surrounded by the lowest place her kind had ever spoken of. Suddenly, she heard a sound. Footsteps, crunching over leaves. Coming closer. Zira, panicked, tried to crawl away, but her leg gave out. She reached for a stick to defend herself, but her fingers were trembling. A figure stepped out from the trees, a tall male, broad shoulders, worn jacket, and a strange helmet hanging at his side. Human Zira's heart pounded in fear. She had been told they would kill her, capture her, maybe even eat her. Her voice was hoarse as she shouted, "Stay back, surface beast!" But the man didn't flinch. He raised his hand slowly and said, "I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was calm. His eyes didn't look angry or cruel. He stepped closer, looked at her leg, and knelt down in the mud. Zira stared at him in disbelief. Why was he not afraid of her glowing eyes or noble crest? He reached out and touched her ankle gently. Zira gasped and tried to slap him. "Do not touch me," she cried. But again, he didn't react with anger. He simply looked into her eyes and said, "You're hurt. Let me help." Zira was too weak to stop him. She watched as he tore part of his own shirt to wrap around her leg. He worked with care, like he had done this before. Then he took off his jacket and placed it over her. The warmth surprised her. For a moment, she didn't move. She had never been touched by someone outside her caste, never been helped by anyone she thought was lower than her. "What is your name?" the human asked, as he gently lifted her into his arms. Zira wanted to stay silent, but the pain and confusion made her whisper. "Zira," he smiled. "Nice to meet you, Zira. I'm Jack." He began walking through the dark forest, carrying her like she weighed nothing. Zira kept watching him, her mind spinning. Why was this human being kind? Why did he not act like the monster she had expected? And why was her chest hurting every time she looked at him? The stars were no longer visible. The trees blocked the sky. Zira, the sky princess, was now in the dirt. Being saved by a man she was raised to hate. She didn't know if it was fear or something else, but for the first time in her life, she doubted what she had been taught. As Jack carried her deeper into the forest, toward some unknown shelter, Zira whispered one question. In her mind, what if they were wrong about humans? Jack carried her for a long time without speaking. The night was cold, but his body was warm. Zira didn't understand this strange feeling growing inside her. He was a human, dirty and loud. Born from mud and machines, and yet, every time she looked at him, her thoughts became quiet. She tried to keep her pride, tried to hold her head high. But every movement made her wince. Her leg throbbed, and her shoulder ached. The pain reminded her she was broken. She hated feeling weak in front of a human. They reached a metal structure hidden among trees. It was an old earth outpost, half buried in vines and rust. Jack kicked the door open with one foot, still holding her. The place was dusty, but dry. He laid her gently on a worn-out couch and started searching through cabinets. Zero watched him like a hawk. He moved with purpose, not fear, she expected. Him to ask for something, maybe a reward, maybe her body, but he never did. He pulled out a medical kit, wiped the dust off, and returned to her side. "This will sting," he said, opening a bottle. Zira turned her head away. "I don't need help from your kind." He sighed but continued anyway. She gasped when the liquid touched her wound. It burned like fire, but he held her gently. Whispering calm words, she wanted to curse him, to spit in his face. But her strength was fading, and her pride cracked with each bandage he wrapped. Jack looked into her eyes again and said, "You'll be okay." Zero didn't reply. She closed her eyes and pretended not to care. Later, he placed a steaming cup near her. It smelled like herbs and something sweet. She stared at it with suspicion. "Drink," he said. "It'll help with the pain." Zero knocked it over with her hand, the liquid spilling across the floor. "I don't trust you," she said coldly. Jack didn't get angry. He just nodded, picked up the broken cup, and started cleaning. She watched, confused, no punishment, no shouting. He was quiet. Like he had seen this kind of anger before, maybe from someone else or maybe from himself. Her stomach growled loudly, and she cursed it under her breath. Jack smiled and reached into his bag, pulling out a small food bar. He placed it on the table near her and walked away. Zero didn't touch it at first. She glared at it like it was poison. But later, when Jack was asleep in the corner, she slowly reached for the bar, unwrapped it, and took a bite. It tasted better than she expected. She hated that it made her feel thankful. She looked at Jack, curled up in his jacket, using a backpack as a pillow. He wasn't watching her, wasn't guarding her. She could have crawled away, escaped, maybe even attacked him, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned back, pulled his jacket tighter around her, and stared at the ceiling. Rain began to tap softly. On the roof, her world had always been one of metal and light. Floating above the clouds, down here, everything was wet and wild, full of smells and sounds she didn't know. But there was something real in it, something honest she listened to. Jack's breathing, steady and calm. Why was he helping her? What did he want from her? She whispered those questions into the dark. The silence didn't answer. By morning, her fever had started. Jack noticed it right away, his hand on her forehead, frowning. "You're burning up," he said. "We need real medicine." Zero tried to sit up, but her vision spun. Her skin felt hot, her mouth dry. He wrapped her in a blanket, lifted her again, and carried her outside. She felt the cold air bite her skin as rain touched her face. Still, she didn't fight him. Even her pride was too weak now. Jack moved fast, almost running through the woods. Every step made her leg jolt with pain. But she didn't scream. She only held on tighter to the human who should have been her enemy. Somewhere deep inside, something was changing. Zira had been raised to believe humans were animals, but this man had treated her with more care than her own people ever had. As her eyes closed again, she heard his voice, soft in her ear. "Just hold on, Zira." She didn't know why, but she did. The rain stopped by the time Jack reached the edge of a small farming village. It was hidden in the hills, surrounded by broken fences and fields left to grow wild. Most people here avoided outsiders, especially alien ones. But Jack had helped them before, fixed their water lines, flew injured workers to nearby towns. They owed him small favors, and today he needed one back. Zira was burning in his arms, whispering words in her own language. Her skin had turned pale, sweat covering her forehead. Jack didn't know much about her species, but he knew this fever wasn't normal. She needed Courand fast. He knocked. On a metal door at the edge of the village, a tall woman opened it, her face cold. Then softening as she saw Jack holding someone. "Please," he said. "She's not from here, but she's dying." The woman hesitated, but stepped aside. Inside, the place smelled like old herbs and smoke. An older man came out, wrinkled and slow, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at Zero once and said, "Upstairs, room with a heater." Jack rushed up, laid her on the bed, and watched as the healer opened a dusty case. Zero moaned, trying to sit up, but Jack held her hand gently. "You're safe," he whispered. She blinked slowly, eyes finding his face. Then she closed them again, breathing heavy and fast. The healer mixed a strange green liquid and injected it into her arm. "She's lucky," he said. "A few more hours and she would have slipped." Jack nodded, not realizing how tight his chest had become. He stayed by her side all night. He didn't sleep. Just watched the rise and fall of her chest. Once, she reached out in her sleep. Grabbing his hand like a child, he didn't pull away. When morning came, Zira's breathing slowed. The fever broke. She opened her eyes weakly and whispered, "Still here." Jack smiled. "You think I just leave you in some village shack?" Zero tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "You humans are strange," she said. "You give without taking." Jack sat down beside the bed, his voice low. "Not all of us," he said, "but some still believe in helping when it matters." Zira turned her head, staring at the cracked ceiling. "No one from my people would do this." She whispered, "Not for you." He didn't reply. Instead, he handed her a cup of warm water. She took it with both hands, sipping slowly. It tasted plain, but it felt like the first real thing she had tasted in days. Later that day, the healer allowed her to sit up. Jack helped her into a chair near the window. Where sunlight broke through dirty glass, she looked outside, saw the fields, the birds, the small children playing in the distance, and for a moment, she didn't hate it. Jack brought her a small meal-warm bread and something yellow and soft. She sniffed it, made a face, but took a bite, then another. Then she finished the whole thing without saying a word. Jack laughed softly. "Not bad, right?" Zero gave him a cold look. "It's edible." But he saw it just for a second, her lip twitching into a smile. Later, when they sat in silence, she spoke again. "My people think your world is a garbage heap," she said. Jack shrugged. "Maybe it is, but it's ours, and you fight for it." She asked, voice quiet, "Every day?" He answered, "We've got flaws, sure, but we protect what we can." Zero leaned back, the blanket still around her shoulders. "Maybe I judged too fast," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jack didn't push her. He just stood, picked up the empty plate, and said, "Rest. I'll be back later," when he left. Zero looked at the cup in her hands. Her reflection stared back, tired and confused. This world wasn't what she had been told, and Jack, he was nothing like the enemy she expected. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time, she didn't feel like running. She wanted to know more about this place, about the people, about him. Zira had started walking again, slowly, leaning on a crutch Jack made from a broken chair leg. Each step hurt, but she never complained. She refused to show weakness, even when her leg trembled under her weight. Jack never pushed her to rest. He just walked beside her in silence, ready to catch her if she fell. The village people kept their distance. Some watched from windows. Others whispered when they saw her white skin and alien markings. Zira saw their stares, but it didn't bother her as much as it used to. She had seen worse than judgment. She had seen death coming through the sky. One evening, Jack stood outside the house, fixing an old antenna. Zira sat nearby on the porch. The crutch resting beside her, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Jack didn't answer right away. He tightened a bolt, then looked down at her. "You remind me of someone I couldn't save," he said softly. Zira blinked. "A human?" He nodded. "Pilot, like me. We crashed during a border raid. I got out, she didn't." Zira lowered her eyes, unsure what to say. "I failed her," Jack added. "Not again." That night, Zira found it hard to sleep. His words echoed in her mind. Not again. Not this time. Was that why he kept risking himself for her? Was she just a second chance for an old wound? The next morning, the village alarm rang. A sharp metallic howl filled the air. Jack jumped up, grabbing his rifle, eyes scanning the sky. Zira limped to the doorway and looked up. 2 drones cut through the cloud silver. Silent and deadly, skyborne Empire patrols. Her people, the villagers, ran for cover. But the drones hovered over Jack's house. One of them flashed a red beam onto Zira's chest. Her body tensed. They weren't here to rescue her. They had tracked her beacon. She was a liability, a runaway noble who saw too much. The drone speakers buzzed. "Return the royal asset immediately, or face destruction." Jack raised his rifle. "She's not going anywhere with you." Zira grabbed his arm. "They will kill you, I know," he said. Never looking away from the machines, the drone opened a compartment, a weapon sliding out. Jack didn't wait. He fired first. The shot hit the side of the drone, making it swerve. The second drone responded, firing a pulse blast toward the porch. Zira pushed Jack, both of them falling behind a stone wall. Smoke and dirt filled the air. Zira coughed, her heart racing. This was real. He was fighting her people for her, not for war, not for gain, just for her. Jack wiped blood from his forehead, looked at her. "We can run," he said. "Head to the hills, lose them in the storm line." Zira shook her head. "They'll keep coming." He gave her a crooked smile. "Then we make them regret it." She looked at the rifle in his hand. She had never held a human weapon before. She reached out. "Ah." And Jack placed it in her hand without a word. Her fingers trembled at first. "Ah." But then they closed around the grip. It felt cold, powerful, alive. Together, they moved through the trees. Behind the house, the drones followed, scanning, pulsing the ground. Jack used his knowledge of the terrain, slipping between roots and ridges. Zira kept up, her legs screaming with pain. But she never fell behind. They reached a clearing with a high ridge. Jack pulled out a small energy cell and tossed it into the open. When the first drone chased it, Zira lifted the rifle and fired. Her aim was off, but not enough to miss completely. The shot clipped the drone's wing, sending it crashing into the trees. The second drone circled above, charging its cannon. Zira screamed, "Now!" Jack jumped from the ridge, landing on the back of the drone. He shoved a metal rod into its intake vent. The drone sparked, wind, and exploded in the air. Jack fell through the smoke, hitting the ground hard. Zira limped over to him, dropped to her knees. His arm was burned, and his breathing was rough. "You idiot," she said, eyes wide with fear. He coughed and grinned. "Told you I don't leave people behind?" Zira looked up at the smoking sky. Her own people had just tried to kill her. This human had almost died protecting her. Everything she believed was falling apart. She didn't speak again that night. She just stayed beside him, holding his hand until the sun came up. Zira sat on a rock while Jack rested under the broken tree, his arm wrapped tightly in cloth. The wind was sharp and cold on the ridge, but neither of them complained. Jack's eyes stayed half closed, his body still recovering from the explosion. Zira had not left his side since the drones fell from the sky. The weight of what had happened pressed down on her chest like a stone. She watched the smoke trail in the sky disappear. It meant one thing: her people knew she was alive. And worse, they knew she had fought them. There would be no rescue, no forgiveness, only punishment. She had broken their trust by surviving. And now she was no longer a princess. She was a target. Jack stirred beside her, his voice raspy. "They'll come again, won't they?" Zero nodded, and this time more will come. He gave a small smile. "Then we'll need a better plan." Zero looked at his bandaged arm, the red stain spreading slowly. She hated the sight of his pain. Not because he was human, but because he had been hurt for her. She stood and whispered, "You need real help." Jack shook his head. "No, we can't go back to the village. They might track us there." Zero stared into the trees. The silence between branches louder than any. "Scream. I have one option," she said quietly. "But you're not going to like it." He raised an eyebrow. "Try me." "There's an old contact from my father's court," she continued. "A traitor like me who hides in the undercities beneath Earth's crust." Jack gave a small laugh. "You royalty sure know how to pick hiding spots," she ignored the joke. "He has healing tech, maybe even a way off this planet." Jack pushed himself to his feet, pain flashing in his eyes. "Then let's go." Zero blinked. "You trust me? After what my people just did?" Jack nodded. "I trust what I've seen, not what I've been told." The journey took 2 days. They moved at night, slept under thick tree roots during the day. Zira hunted small animals using Jack's knife, her hands trembling the first time she did it. He showed her how to make a fire, how to read the sky. And she showed him the old codes to avoid patrol zones. By the third night, they reached the entrance. Hidden behind a rock wall covered in moss, Zira pressed her hand against a nearly invisible panel, and the stone moved aside with a low hum. They stepped into darkness. Then dim blue light glowed from the walls. The air changed. It was colder, heavier, and it smelled like metal and secrets. Jack looked around. "You sure about this guy?" "No," Zero answered. "But he's our only chance." They followed the tunnel until they reached a wide chamber filled with machines and screens. In the center stood a tall figure in a dark cloak, his back turned to them. "I was expecting you," he said in a deep voice. Zero stepped forward. "Tarn." He turned, and his face showed age and knowledge, his eyes glowing faint blue. "Zero," he said, "you look dirty." She didn't react. "This is Jack. He's hurt." Tarn walked to Jack, scanned him with a silver device, then gave a low whistle. "You're lucky to be breathing." He led Jack to a table, pressed a button, and a beam of light passed over the wounds. Jack tensed but didn't scream. Tarn looked at Zira. "You broke every law of your people. And for what?" "A human." Zero raised her chin. "For someone who saved me without asking why." Tarn laughed softly. "Then you've truly changed." The healing finished, and Jack sat up slowly, his breathing steady again. Zira helped him stand, her hand gripping his tightly. Tarn watched them with curious eyes. "You know, they'll send assassins now." "I know," Zira said, "but I won't run anymore." She turned to Jack. "There's one more thing I need from you." Jack tilted his head. "Name it. I need to send a message." She said, voice steady, "To all skyborne ships in orbit." Tarn's eyes widened. "You're going to speak against the Queen?" Zira nodded slowly. "Not against her," she said, "but for the truth." Tarn activated an old transmitter, its core flickering like a heartbeat in the dark. Dust rose as the console came alive, screens lighting up with skyborne symbols. Zira stood in front of it, her reflection ghost-like in the cracked glass. Jack stood behind her, silent, his hand resting near the rifle. Just in case, the time had come, and her choice could not be undone. She took a breath, her voice shaking but steady, to all skyborne vessels in orbit. She began, "This is Zira, daughter of High Matron Vela." Tarn's eyes darted toward her in surprise. She had never used her full title since the crash. "Not even once. I declare myself disloyal to the crown," she said, her voice growing louder. "I was sent to watch, to study humans from above, but I have lived among them. They are not beasts," she continued. "They are not filth. They are people." Her hand trembled as she reached for the red seal and pressed it. The message began to transmit, pulsing upward through the crust of Earth. Every skyborne vessel would receive it, and with her crest seal, none could deny it was real. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked back at him, her face pale but proud. Then Tarn shut the console down, silence falling heavy in the room. "It's done," he said. "You've just declared war on your own name." Zira nodded. "Then I'll build a new one." The air shifted, and Tarn's sensors buzzed. He checked the screen and frowned. "Skyborne elite guards," he said slowly. "3 ships entering atmosphere." Jack grabbed his rifle. "They're fast," Tarn added. "They're not here to negotiate." Zero didn't flinch. "They're coming for me," she said, "but they'll have to go through both of us." Jack looked at her, something deep stirring behind his eyes. "3 ships, elite soldiers," he said. "Not exactly fair odds." Zero managed a tiny smile. For them, they left the underground chamber through a side tunnel. The exit led to an abandoned satellite tower buried in trees. Tarn handed Zira a pair of pulse pistols and a disc. "You don't have to do this," he warned. But she was already stepping into the wind. The sky cracked with thunder as the first drops of rain fell. 3 ships came down through the clouds, black and gold like armored birds. Jack and Zero stood on the muddy slope near the tower. Weapons in hand, the ground shook as the first ship landed, sending wind across the trees. Jack leaned toward her. "One chance to run." Zira shook her head. "No more running." Soldiers in gleaming armor marched out. Rifles raised, visors glowing. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, his voice loud and sharp. "By order of the High Matron, you are to be returned." "For judgment," Zira answered. "I speak with my own voice now." The soldier pointed his weapon at Jack and the human. Zira stepped between them, under my protection. That was when the first shot was fired. Jack ducked and rolled, returning fire while Zira moved with speed and grace. Her body remembered the old training she once thought beneath her. But now it felt right real. The fight was brutal, mud flying, smoke burning in the rain. Jack was hit in the leg but kept firing, covering Zira's side. She took down 2 soldiers with clean shots, her eyes sharp, focused. She wasn't a princess anymore. She was a warrior. Tarn's voice echoed through the disc. 2 more squads incoming. Fall back to the tower." Zero grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him toward the metal steps. He limped, but didn't slow down. Inside the tower, they set traps, rigged the corridors, sealed doors. It was dark and narrow, but every step echoed with their will to survive. Zero helped Jack sit, his leg bleeding again. "You still with me?" she asked. He gave a tired smile. "Not going anywhere." She leaned closer, brushing dirt from his face. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I did," he said. "Because you're not just an alien girl anymore, you're mine." To protect, Zira's chest tightened, not with fear, but something deeper, outside. The metal groaned as more soldiers landed. She stood, raised her pistols, and whispered to herself, "Let them come." The tower shook again as more soldiers landed outside. Zira stood at the window, watching shapes move through the trees. They came slowly, carefully. Knowing she was waiting, Jack leaned against the wall beside her, pale from blood loss, but still alert. The sky above them burned orange with sunset, casting long shadows across the forest. "They're not stopping," Jack said quietly. Zero nodded. They won't until one of us is gone. Below, the soldiers formed lines, readying for a final push. Zira's hands tightened around the pistols. She looked down at Jack and then at the cum disc Tarn had left with her. There was still one last option, a full-burst transmission. To every skyborne ship, not just the ones above Earth, it would expose everything. Her betrayal, her message, her choice to stand with a human. And it would paint a target on her for the rest of her life. Jack saw the hesitation in her eyes. You? Don't have to do it, he said. We can fight, just us. She turned to him, slowly kneeling down. I'm not afraid of dying, Jack, she said, but I want the truth to live. She pressed the activation rune and raised the disc. Skyborn Empire, this is Zira of the Ninth House, she said, her voice echoing across the stars. Your soldiers are here, not to protect, but to silence me. I stand with a human, not because I am weak, but because I saw strength in him that I never found in my own kind. The soldiers heard her too, her voice blasting from the disc on her belt. Some of them hesitated. Others looked to their commander. Confused, humans are not our enemies. Zero continued. They are flawed, yes, but so are we. And one of them gave me what none of you ever did. Choice. She ended the BROADCAST and waited. No one fired. The soldiers stood still, listening to the quiet between each breath. Then the leader raised his hand, signaling to move. Zira didn't step back. She stood tall, arms at her side, her pistols lowered. If you shoot, she said, you become everything I said you were. The soldier looked at her, then at Jack, then back to his team. No one moved. Then slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Zero blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. The commander spoke through his helmet. Voice hollow. You're no longer under royal protection, he said. You're on your own. She answered calmly. That's all I ever wanted. The ships pulled back, rising slowly into the clouds, within moments. The forest grew quiet again. Only the wind and the distant call of nightbirds remained. Zira turned to Jack, a mix of relief and disbelief on her face. We're still alive, she said softly. Jack laughed, even though it hurt. I'm starting. To think you're bad luck, she smiled and sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. I thought I'd die alone, she whispered. You didn't, he replied, and you won't. Weeks passed. The world didn't change overnight, but something had shifted. Zira's message spread through the skyborne networks. Some called her a traitor, others called her brave. But most importantly, they listened. More skyborne began speaking out, questioning. The silence, the fear, the old ways. On Earth, Zira and Jack lived quietly, moving from place to place, sometimes helping small towns, sometimes just watching the stars. She learned how to grow food. And he taught her how to read human books. One night, while sitting near a campfire, Jack looked over at her. What would your mother say if she saw you now? Zero laughed quietly. She'd probably faint. Jack poked the fire with a stick. Worth it? Zero looked up at the sky, where no ships chased her now. Yes, she said, because I found a home. Not in a palace, not in the clouds. She looked at him. I found it in you. Jack didn't answer with words. He reached out, held her hand gently, and smiled. For the first time in both their lives, there was no war, no anger, no duty to anyone but each other. Just peace and stars and the quiet truth that love had survived where fear had once ruled.